On this episode of Into the Lion's Den, we have a very special guest. It is the headmaster of Ridgeview Classical School, Mr. Derek Anderson. We're going to be talking a whole lot about growth and development, shaping impressionable minds, the importance of moral character, and just learning all about their schools in the classical education system. It's going to be great. Tune in.
Welcome to the hunting ground, where business gets real. This is Into the Lion's Den, where we build smarter, lead harder, and protect what matters most, with your host, Christian Griffith. Let's get to work.
All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of Into the Lion's Den. Today, we have a very special co-host. I'm very excited for Mr. Anderson, Derek Anderson of Ridgeview Classical Academy to be here. We'll introduce him in a moment, but just feeling very blessed already, just in your presence. So I'm really excited to see you, the headmaster of my children's school, learn a little bit about how you're shaping lives and that type of stuff. As always, this episode is brought to you by Pride Roofing and Construction and Level Creative Studios. We always have a sound bite there. It's like a cat noise. So I won't ask you to do the cat noise. We won't clip it and put it in as a button on the little soundboard. But so Derek, pleasure to have you here. Thank you for doing this with us. I guess just tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, yeah, thank you for taking the time to do this with me and giving me the opportunity to visit with you. My name is Derek Anderson. I am the headmaster at Ridgeview Classical. I came to Ridgeview in 2007, weirdly, after reading a article called The Sons of Murphy Brown, which was in the Claremont Review of Books. It was written by a guy named Terrence Moore, who was at the time the principal at Ridgeview. And I thought that there was a lot wrong with education in general. I didn't really realize fully that my biggest problem was with what was happening in K-12. I thought that it was mostly happening in the undergraduate world. And I read The Sons of Murphy Brown, and I thought this might be somebody who actually understands, or at least that I sort of in agreement with about some of the challenges. And so I kind of went looking for who is this guy and how do I make contact with him. And to cut a long story short, I ended up taking a position to teach history and government and some philosophy electives all the way back in 2007, and then stayed way beyond the length of time I thought that I would. I thought that I would be there for a year and that I was going to take my LSATs and go to law school. Okay. And I did take the LSATs. I got as far as that. And ultimately chose not to pursue that and stayed on. And then in 2013, became principal, and it's just the role I've held since.
Sure. Well, actually, if you don't mind me just asking a few questions on the beginning part, I know we have some other points we want to go over, but I guess what would you say were the things that you were actually, like, what was corrupted in the educational system? What was it that you were most focused on, and why have you been able to, dedicate so much time to this new endeavor?
Sure. Yeah, I think that, one of the things that I say a lot about Ridgeview is that people say, how did you come up with these ideas, or why is it the way that it is? And I say, first of all, we've got a lot of great people, but I think that most of those people are attempting to build the school that they wished they'd had. And so what I mean by that, I guess for me is when I got to university, I didn't have an education that looked anything like what's happening at Ridgeview. When I got to university, I found out that a bunch of people had a much better education than I did, and that I was playing catch up, and it was a ton of work. And it almost felt like I'd been cheated in certain respects about what I had gotten or how I had been taught in some ways. And so when I came to Ridgeview, what I realized was that it was a huge opportunity to, for instance, be able to slow down, talk about primary source text. So in other words, have kids read the Constitution and talk about the Constitution rather than read something that someone else has written about the Constitution. Or to be able to really to read a whole book as opposed to these select passages and things.
So kind of going to the origin and creating your own, I guess, opinion and let that take hold instead of letting somebody else shape you.
Yeah, and giving them, I think, some buy-in in it,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that what you're looking for was to be able to have a discussion
Mm-hmm.
rather than, what we kind of jokingly call the sage on the stage routine,
Mm-hmm.
where I'm at the front of the room and I'm the adult and they gave me the expo marker, so I'm in charge.
That's what I do every single day. I got the exo marker, so I'm in charge. Right?
and I think the problem is I'm sure anybody who's ever talked to anybody knows is that you lose the engagement when the other person doesn't feel like they're a part of
Mm-hmm.
the thing. And that really is the craft, I guess, and the art of teaching is not just whether you know your thing, and that's usually a book or a text or a piece of music or a piece of art or whatever it might be, but how do you guide the other person to have as full an appreciation and an understanding as they possibly can? And that to me was super interesting because I didn't feel like it had happened in my own kind of K-12 education. And I saw it happening in the best cases as an undergraduate and then obviously as a graduate student. The best teachers could do that sort of effortlessly. And I thought, where's this been? What happened to this for the prior 13 years?
Yeah.
So that's what we've tried to, I think, recreate is this level of engagement and authenticity about, we're going to try to cater to your sense of wonder and your sense of curiosity and feed lots of good stuff into that.
Well, I can tell you when we first brought the kids to Ridgeview, that was one of the, it's kind of like buzzwords kind of change the way that you think about things and your ears perk up and stuff like that. But the real buzzwords for me, which it's clear that that's really the more like the philosophy at Ridgeview is we're not here to teach people what to think. We're teaching them how to think, like how to actually use your brain, formulate your own ideas and so on and so forth. So what would you say a day in the life of a Ridgeview student is as opposed to like a public school currently in today's day and age? I know for me it was basically just listen and regurgitate. It's like we're going to state facts. I have the marker. I'm the one that's in charge. What I said is important, so remember it and write it down, and hopefully remember that on the test as well, right? And that's pretty much the entirety of my high school career, middle school career, whatever. But
yeah, I think that we're trying. In some ways, we have huge advantages. I think in numbers. I think one of the areas that American education and education elsewhere probably too went awry was in trying to apply sort of an economies of scale approach to education. And I think that the endeavor of educating people is so intimate and so personal that it's harder to do, say, with 2,000 people who may or may not really be known to anyone when they walk in the door versus, in our case, 750 kids coming through those doors. And years ago, we were standing around a campfire and on a 10th grade trip, and the lady who helps me run the outdoor program said, well, we're going to go around. I want you to tell everybody, what does Ridgeview mean to you? And what has this trip meant to you? And just basically get the kids talking around this campfire. And they went around, but it kind of came back to her. And then they turned the question on her and they said, well, what do you think it is that's special about being at Ridgeview? And I thought, I'm glad it got to her before it got to me. I don't know what I didn't really know we were going to be the ones asking or answering the questions. And she said, really without much of a pause, it was kind of admirable how quickly she came up with the answer. She said, I think the difference is that at Ridgeview, you are known and loved. And the spring is always kind of a poignant period of time for me to think about her saying that, because we're doing these senior theses and these kids that in some cases, 10 of them, I think this year, started there in kindergarten. So they've been there for 13 years. They came in, maybe knowing most of the letters of the alphabet and having to learn to read and do all of the other things that a kid is going to do between the time they're 5 and the time they're 18. And then they're standing up on that stage for 40 minutes in front of an audience, potentially of 300 people, answering a question about what they believe is essential to a good life and what this 13 years of education has meant to them and all of the experiences that have happened to them outside of Ridgeview. And it is such a dramatic transformation. And it is the thing I tell people with young children is, be careful, take pictures, take notes, keep a journal, because it goes so fast that there's almost not a dry eye in the room when these kids are up there doing that, because
I wouldn't make it through it without just bawling. Absolutely.
and you're just so
Mhm.
shocked
Mhm.
at what total individuals they've become. You know,
Mhm.
we've asked that same question for 25 years
Mhm.
and we've never heard the same answer.
Wow.
Because I think it is so hyper personalized. So back to that
Mhm.
thing of known and loved.
Yeah, that's full circle to the statement that you made.
Yeah.
It's like, here we know who you are. We're engaged with you. We care about the sequence and the steps and whether you're making it through, whether there's a troubled experience. In a public school, it is like that. It's like, well, if you've met the baseline metrics according to the state, we're just going to shuffle you along and we're not going to dive into this. Somebody else can figure it out. It's like they're passing the buck to the next person until everybody graduates, and hopefully they can figure it out on their own.
Right.
You know? So I feel that. Yeah, maybe I kind of now, since Gabe and Adeline have been there, I've kind of felt the same thought process. Like, I kind of felt like I was cheated in the early years.
Yeah.
It's like, this was available. And then I'm especially watching, Gabe's in second grade. He's 7 years old. When I was 7 years old and in second grade, I was still struggling to figure out, very basic things when it comes to spelling and reading and so on and so forth. And this guy's reading full novels,
Yeah.
he pulls them off the shelf himself. He actually wants to read. There's a thirst for the knowledge. I mean, he doesn't want to read, biology textbooks or
Right.
philosophy just yet, but I'm sure he will. He's a very intelligent guy. But it's funny watching him. We're doing rigs and stuff at home and he's learning how to spell stuff, but it's like, I just had to learn how to spell it. I didn't have to learn these accents. I didn't have to learn, why this number encourages this, I guess, spin on the word and the way that it's actually, spoken and stuff like that. I was like, it's just, here's your letters, spell it, great, move on.
Right.
You know? And so like the extra thinking that he has to do is instinctually making him more inquisitive for everything. It's like he thinks, like, he asks me some of the craziest questions for a 7-year-old. It's like, this is reality that seems to be opposed to reality. Tell me why.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're 7. Like, I don't think you're going to understand the answer, but actually, I kind of think you might now understand the answer. So you're getting something that I didn't have. So now I'm jealous.
I mean, I absolutely remember these moments with my own daughter. And I remember one day she walked in. She probably about the same. She might have been first grade or maybe even kinder, but young. And she walked into the closet and I was getting dressed, and she had dressed herself, and it was part swimsuit and part ballerina costume. I mean, it was so many different things going on at once. And I looked at her and I was thinking, well, how do I explain this to her? And I said, sweetheart, if I were you, I don't know that I would wear that. And she looked at me and she goes, no, if you were me, you would. Again, there's like logic check. Like, this is a little Alice in Wonderland moment here.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe you're right.
Exactly. That's funny. Yeah, what you guys are doing there is just, it's blowing my mind watching them grow. And Adeline's been a different story. She went through a couple different public schools and then a small segment of homeschooling, primarily because she has really bad asthma, or she's kind of working out of it a little bit. But when she was younger, it was terrible. And when they had the mask mandates and Larimer County forced all of these compliance standards and stuff like that, she was getting in trouble every day. She was spending more time in the principal's office than in the classroom because she couldn't breathe and had to move the mask down. It's like, shouldn't there be some kind of exception here? But it was clear it's a one size fits all. Yeah. It's like everybody follows this plan. It doesn't matter that you have you have a medical exemption for it, or you have this or you have that. It's like, we don't care that it's you. We care that everybody does this. And it was like, well, okay, let's try it at home. That didn't work either.
Right, yeah.
And let's just say me and my wife are not teachers. So kudos to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I think that in terms of like, I mean, essentially what you're describing is like, how do you individuate this thing to a particular person and their ability levels? And I sometimes joke with kids. I say, I'm not really concerned or interested in what you're great at. I mean, I will celebrate it alongside everyone else. But what I'm more concerned and interested in is, what are you afraid of? And what aren't you good at? Yeah. And how do I help you in that respect? Because if I can build up your confidence in that, if I can, if it's a fear of heights, well, let's go do a multi-pitch climb. If it's you're terrified that you're never going to be able to read these big books because they're intimidating, and it's a lot of pages, and it requires a lot of focus and a lot of concentration. Let me walk you through that. I mean, I had a moment when I first came to Ridgeview. I'd probably read Melville's Moby Dick. I think I read it twice in full before I came to Ridgeview, and I did not like the book. I had zero appreciation for it. But it was one of the books that the juniors were reading in their junior lit class, still is. And I was sitting having lunch with a teacher one day in the lounge, and I said, I just don't understand this whole sort of fixation on Moby Dick. And she said, you don't? And I said, no. Where she was the one teaching it, right? And she basically, she had a tattered copy that had 1,000 dog ears in it. She picked her a copy of the book up, and she read this passage with just absolute, I mean, if she had been pledging herself to war, she couldn't have said it with any more conviction than she did. And I thought, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I know why this has been read by hundreds of thousands of people for decades and decades. And I think sometimes it takes somebody just having one of those moments with another person for whom it means almost everything. And it turns you, right? It is, you know, it's Plato's line from the Republic is we're turning souls towards truth. And you have these moments with great teachers, and it totally changes your attitude towards a thing that you thought you didn't like. And that's why, like, when you were talking about the reading full books and they want to read and they're enjoying it, parents will ask me, what's the most important thing we can do if we're coming into kinder or coming into first or we're new to the school? And my answer is almost always read together. Like, if you love to read, everything else about this is easier and more enjoyable. Like, it is possible that school can be enjoyable, which is a shock to a lot of kids. And you know, it's not always going to be fun, and it's not always going to be easy.
There will be times that the topic is just not your flavor.
But so much of your life can be made easier if you enjoy the thing you're doing. And I think a lot of those kids fortunate in that they love to read, and so that part of it is easier for them.
Well, there's a lot of, I hate that I keep bringing my personal history into this conversation because I really want to focus on you, but I do feel like I was kind of a bit of an outlier in the track that I went on, because I actually wanted to learn when I got to college. I was like, I actually want to study. I actually want to do these things, and it really was probably the reason that I chose the school that I did, outside of a little bit of pride. I can tell you a little bit more about that one in a minute. I named the whole business pride. There's a lot of layers to that statement. But anyways, it was when I went to my orientation, I sat in a room with who was going to be my advisor through that track, and as long as I didn't change courses or emphasis and stuff. And they're like, well, it's about a 45-to-1 ratio in a college, and I was like, okay, so this is like high school all over again. I have access to my teachers. I have the ability to walk into their office hours and actually get an answer back from them. And if I want somebody to invest in me, as long as I'm showing in the classroom, there's an opportunity for that here, as opposed to the other schools I was looking at. It was like 600-to-1 or 300-to-1 or 400-to-1, and you're in these lecture halls, and if you want to ask a question, you have to press a button, and hopefully they see the light pop up somewhere, and and stuff like that. So that was one I guess correlative, what's the word? Correlated piece to what you were saying is that intimate setting that you guys have there, and the care for people actually does drive a whole different result. And then when you're talking about the conviction that was stated, when you're talking, with Melville, I've never actually read Moby Dick. I know the very first line, but only because I've watched Matilda like 3,000 times in my life. Like, call me Ishmael, I was like, okay, so I know the book, right? We were talking about it before. We read the first page and the last page, and we guessed everywhere in between. But anyways, that's a very true statement. If you have somebody who's speaking with not just authority, but it's like the conviction, and there's an emotional connection between what they're giving you and the fact that they actually want you to receive it simultaneously. It's like they care about this, and they care that you actually want to receive this. It's a whole different outcome, right? And that's why I try to apply here with the team members as much as I can. Now, this is obviously not higher education or philosophy. We're building rebuilding things that are broken on houses is what we do for a living. But at the same time, if people approach things, those are the people that I actually, bring into the management fold or into the executive team, or the people that I know they not only care about this, but they care to grow the people around them, because I know that if there's inherent care and concern for the people that are underneath of them, I don't have to worry about taking my hands off the wheel and worrying that they're going to be falling off course. Yeah. Your students, and it's proven with your students, when I went to the Numis auction and Numis, the gala, it was insane to me just how many people who are already committed to these incredible endeavors. When you guys were talking through everything, it was like, you have people going to Columbia, you have people, I can't remember the actual schools, but I mean, name any, Ivy League school and you have somebody going there, it seems like. And, and then they started talking about the fact that your test scores were of the top 5 in Colorado. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it varies year to year, but
and also in the top 50 in the nation. It's like, well, my kids get to go to one of the absolute best schools in America. Sign me up and tell me what I need to do to support that. Adeline, on the other hand, she's, like I was saying, her path has been a little bit different. She started kind of a little bit behind because of the issues with public school, homeschooling, and stuff like that, and she has really excelled. I've seen incredible movement with her, but now her mindset is kind of went to the social world. She's like, I want to go somewhere so I can have a real homecoming and watch football games and all that stuff. And I'm like, you're missing the point of how valuable this is, Adeline. I'm not going to try to force you in a different direction, because I think that you'll, probably hate me for forever for that. But let's think about what you can actually do if your mind is just, is just ripe for nurturing,
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think I think that's true, is that they've kind of got to plot their own course, and we're here to obviously we keep the guardrails on. My joke is that there has to be a safety net, but ideally the safety net is invisible. Right? Because they don't know that they're taking real risk if they believe that
it doesn't
they can't fail.
Sure.
And I think failure is important. I think it's important that they're allowed to make mistakes in an environment in which there's lots of people around them to help them recover and have an interest in them recovering.
Failure and pain are two of the best teachers that there are. As long as you think about it from the right perspective. It gets you down, the Cowboys in my family, you got to get back on the horse. If you don't get on the horse within the next couple of minutes, you're never getting back on that horse. You're gonna be scared for it forever. This is
I used to joke. I was at a shooting competition thing one time, and I was standing behind the guy that was in front of me to go, and so you're kind of lined up, and I'm in the bullpen, as it were, and I'm looking at there's 5 people in front of you. You're not that nervous, and then there's only one guy in front of you, and you're getting pretty nervous, running through your head about what you're going to do next. And I kind of glance up and I read the back of this guy's shirt, who's in front of me, and it says, "Success comes only after repeated demoralizing failures." I was like, wow, that guy just got very inside of my head.
Yeah, he did. He was like, well, hopefully today is not just a learning lesson.
That's right.
That's funny. One of the prompt notes here is that most people don't actually think, they react to what's in front of them. We've talked a little bit so far about how at Ridgeview, one of the core concepts is not teaching people what to think, just spewing information, and you're required to regurgitate it. Let's see what your retention is for today.
Right.
But how to think, and so that you can answer that question or any other subsequent question that has that much complexity to it in the future. What are the rhythms or patterns or ways of teaching those to the students in your school that you found to be valuable?
Yeah. So I think, one of the ways maybe to talk about this is, there's a quotation on the wall in the classroom that I teach in, and it's from another headmaster in the early part of, or I guess late part of the 19th century, excuse me, and in the UK. And one of the things that he says, what is part of what a great education is that it makes one sort of amenable to subject to censure and refutation, meaning that we kind of all come into a situation with some preconceived ideas, with habits or ways or trends of thinking, and it makes us very disinclined to listen or hear what the other person is saying, or question why they might be forming their thoughts in the way that they do.
Mhm.
And so part of it, I think, is getting students to, this will go under various titles, but, to actively listen to one another rather than, and I usually say quirky things like, put your hands down, your hands up, your ears are closed. So people are so, ready to they want to assert, right? They don't submit has a really bad word in our, it has a bad connotation in our sort of modern language. And so I think what you're trying to get them to do is to be patient, to learn to listen, to contemplate why this other person is saying this thing, and be willing to change your position, and not always to have it be about simply you remembering the last thing you read about something, or to believe that the last thing that you read has to be right in total to have any value. I mean, nothing, what I usually tell students is nothing is wholesale right. What you're looking for, what you're sifting through, is trying to find the parts of it that seem true and seem plausible and probable, and then to go into the next conversation willing to move the needle and change your position if need be. And I think that's the thing that parents are often surprised by when they come and they visit like in my class, for instance, and this happened this year towards the beginning of the year, and these students were debating this point in the moral philosophy class, and a girl had made a point, the boy responded and said, I disagree, and another of his friends said, well, wait, aren't you really just saying the same thing that she said in a different way? And he thought about it. He said, actually, say what you said one more time. And she did. And he said, no, wait, you're right. That is what I'm doing. And he goes, I think you're right. And to the kids, it was a total nothing kind of moment, in the sense that it wasn't significant for the reasons that we're talking about right now. And the kids left the room, and the mom came up to me and she said, I don't know whether even you understand how remarkable that is. How few adults do that over the course of their days and lives, because they invest a kind of egoism in the thing. And the kids are still at this point where they're trying to form up their judgments about things. And so they're really open. And I think that's what we're trying to get at is, I mean, I even tell them they take a thing called a senior leaving exam. So they walk into a room, we feed them a bunch of breakfast burritos and joke around and talk with them. And then we pitch them a question that can't be more than 10 words long. And they write for 3 hours on that question.
Oh, wow.
And the point of it has to be that it's a question that they've never seen before. It's never been posed to them before. It can be answered from a scientific perspective, out of the humanities. It's going to require basically everything they've got to figure out how to compose a intelligent answer to the question. So I think what we're trying to get at with that is we're not just asking you, what color was the chair? Well, the chair was brown. And then I'm going to wait 30 days. I'm going to ask you what color the chair was. And if you tell me it was brown, I'm going to give you a treat. That's going to be our reward mechanism.
Sure.
It's not that memory is unimportant. It's that it is a component piece of how a person reasons as they encounter new problems in life. And those problems, I think about every time I attempt a construction project, for instance, I think I really should have paid more attention in geometry because I completely forgot the angle issue here.
I think that every day. And I started working construction.
And so, I think that what you're looking for is to teach people how to think through problems that you have to have a kind of intellectual humility about that, because you don't know what they're going to do for a living, and you don't know what problems they're going to encounter. So you're giving them the best that you can in order to help them find their way to answers as they encounter different problems.
Wow. There's a whole lot to break down out of that. Well, so I have a couple of thoughts. So
Sure.
I guess I'll start with the last one and work my way back, and hopefully I remember to do that. But I kind of feel like that's one of the biggest, that's the Achilles heel of our nation as it sits right now, is the inability to adjust. Like you said, move the needle. It's like we have these preconceived notions of how things are supposed to be, packed with the egotistical nature of the fact that the United States is that the most powerful government in history, the most powerful, military in history, is the most economically prosperous, whatever in history. So therefore, what we say must be right. right? It's like, but there's always ways to adjust and pivot and tune things down and make it so that things can be better, or things can be streamlined, or we can get rid of hemorrhaging if we're talking about a business in a business sense, or whatever that it is. But you can't do that if you don't have the willingness to adjust your thought process, right? So I think that you've found how we can fix America. And it's just changing, as their seedlings in the school, right? Yeah. And help them develop those, like I think the word you said was moral intelligence. Yeah. It's like maybe we shouldn't lead with pride and lead with what we know. Maybe we should lead with questions of the things that we don't know and see if we can formulate a more robust response to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's an interesting paradox in that I tell students all the time, I was way more confident in some respects about things that I believed of political nature when I knew less about the history and the philosophy that formed up those opinions. The more I read, I guess in a weird way, the less I'm certain of.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an Einstein quote. Is that not?
That might be. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like the more I understand about nature, the more I realize I know nothing, or something like that too.
Maybe you draw it all the way back to Socrates, which he just starts with, I don't know.
We know nothing. Yeah. Like a grain of sand, on a beach, an endless beach with an ocean the size of, whatever. But either way, so me and attempting to go back to the beginning and also relate it to what we talk about in here all the time. One of the biggest points that you said is the active listening. I remember, put your hands down. Right. Let's hear the whole thing before we formulate some form of response, because we already know if you're answering now, that means you have a predisposed answer. Like if you already know how you're going to handle this argument or this debate or whatever that it is. So let's hear the whole thing. With my sales guys, I regularly say this. I say, God gave you two ears, two eyes, and one mouth for a reason. Use them in proportion.
Right.
Because ultimately, to become a good salesperson, right, you have to stop worrying about the sale. You have to start understanding what the problem is to the client and find out whether you can pose a solution that meets those necessary requirements. Right. It's like, yes, you want to sell something. Yes, there's a commission at the other side of it if it all goes through. But if you're not listening to anything, then you're essentially boxing yourself into, I'm only going to be able to sell to the one person that wants to hear it from my perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so obviously this is teaching and growth, and it's a lot more universal than just selling products. But at the same time, it's active listening is something I don't think that people in the world these days really apply.
Well, and it's relational. I mean, I think whether it's selling or teaching, it's relational. It's two people in a room trying to understand one another and what each is after. And in the context of education, and this is one of the things that I tell students at the end of every year is, listen, and I always add it up. I can't remember what the math is now, but I say you've spent, if you were here for every day that you were supposed to be here, you spent X number of hours of your life. This has to mean something for you. You guys are 17 and 18 years old. You're not just here because somebody dropped you off here. You're here because you chose to be here. It's got to be worthwhile to you. And I tell them this at the beginning of the year too. And I say, my objective is to make this worth your while. Like worst case experience is you read some good books and you laughed at a few of my jokes. But a way better outcome would be you are a more thoughtful person who understands why you do the things you do and why you are who you are. If I can help you get, inch closer to answers about that, that is my ultimate objective. So if I'm doing things that are not conducive to that, that's what I want to hear from you. If there were books in here that you felt like were a total waste of your time, tell me that. I'll find better books. If there's a better way to explain something, or I need to do a better job, tell me that. I never had a teacher do that.
Well, that's completely different. There's a two-way street there, like you said in the sales analogy. It's two people are trying to get somewhere. And we have to build a relationship. It can't be a one-way relationship. It's like, I believe these are the best books to build your foundation of education off of. So here you go. Let's read them, regurgitate them, listen to them, whatever it is that you do. You're only going to be able to. I mean, if there's a spectrum of comprehension, you're only going to be grasping at maybe a percentage, a small fraction, right? So that's pretty cool. Well, I think you did a much better job of answering that question than I was expecting. But it's like, most people think. Everybody thinks. You have to think to get out of bed, and sometimes it's natural and habitual. You have to think to, am I going to actually perform today, or am I going to just show up and go through the motions? Those types of things. You have to make choices. Most people are just reacting to what they know their obligations are. I feel like in the school that you've built, people are positioning themselves to have like a more proactive approach to wanting to grow, whether it's professionally or whether it's this or whether it's that. So I'm in full support of the way that you are doing things, if you haven't picked that up by now. So, we've talked a lot about how you guys are able to induce smart ways of thinking about things from a perspective where you're, there's no predisposed answer, or what's the word? Pre-thought out response. It's like, we're going to listen, we're going to absorb, we're going to potentially pivot, and we're going to be able to adjust so we can have a conversation with the world, learn something, and build relationships with the people around us, so we can kind of grow as a whole unit, because humans naturally are pretty communal. But I want to pivot into another part. One of the things that I loved, and I continue to love, is I see it the second you walk in the doors when you drop the kids off, and you talk about the character pillars, and those they're everywhere. You see those words in Latin mostly, and then you see them elsewhere throughout the school. You see it in the kids' literature. You see it constantly. You guys are really ingraining these character pillars, and I would moral principles, I guess is a good way to characterize that. Would you care to discuss, or will you explain what those are, and kind of just go over how you embed those into the kids, and then what you've seen as a result after being, kind of inculcated in that for however long they're with you?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I didn't fully appreciate, I think, when I started teaching in this setting is one of my predecessors had said, kids think of every story in moral terms. And I thought, that's not true. And then I had a kid, and then I realized there was a lot of truth in it, in that kids want to know who was the good person and who was the bad person. And they, there is a sort of there are archetypes about these things. And probably the most, easy to go to example of this is these kids will eventually write a paper on Robin Hood. Is Robin Hood a hero, or is he a villain? And on the one hand, you have the kids that say, well, King John is the rightful ruler, and this other guy, the sheriff and so on, is an usurper. He is acting in defiance of the rightful king, and Robin Hood is right to do what he's doing. Other people will say, well, he's right because it's right to redistribute the wealth of the wealthy to the poor. And the libertarians, they really love that. But, the idea is that it's open for discussion again, right? And so the kids, I think, gravitate fairly naturally to wanting to have conversations in moral terms. And now when you put those character pillars up there, and you're influencing whether or not they recognize that their behavior is good or bad. Now you've taken it away from literature, and you've made it personal to what they choose to do. And it can be, as you said, right, as simple as picking up a friend's pencil that they dropped, or holding the door for the rest of the class as they come in or out of a room. But they start to think about it in those terms. I really think that's important. And I think we lose track of that much later on, obviously in 8th grade. And I think, again, in 11th grade, we talk about William Penn, who is where we get Pennsylvania from. But back when it was still a colony, one of the things that William Penn had said is, he said, it's the purpose of government to reward virtue and repress vice. When we think about government most of the time, we think mostly about the latter part of that. We think about repression of vice. We don't think about government, short of things like someone receiving military awards or Medal of Honor or something.
The big stuff is,
it's got to be huge.
Generally, something that's just pitched out at a State of the Union address to say, "Hey, we check marked this box." Kind of thing.
But we don't think about the fact that what holds society together really is these small things of you did right? Like you didn't insult someone, you didn't assault someone, you did the kind and generous thing rather than, whatever might have been easy or transactional in some way. So I think that these kids, whether when they're little and you're rewarding them for these sorts of things with these Hoplite hero tickets, and it means a lot to them when they're little, those conversations inherently change as they get older. I think you see it in the disciplinary process, for instance. It's not simply a matter of you messed up, now this is this very punitive thing. That's the least interesting part of the disciplinary process. The more interesting part of the disciplinary process would be, why did you do what you did? And how does that not cohere with the character pillars? And you're asking them to reflect. You're not issuing the lesson. They're learning the lesson because they can read and they're looking at this wall. And I think, and then again, it takes on even greater depth when they get older and they're in something like a moral philosophy class and they're reading Aristotle and they're asking, is the value, say, of accidentally doing a virtuous act the same as intentionally doing it? Does the motive and intent behind the things that we do matter, or is it only the outcome? And so they're having conversations about virtue ethics. Is this, which is complicated because, as Aristotle puts it, it has to be the right thing done in the right place, in the right way, at the right time, towards the right. That's a lot of variables. Or is it deontology, which is just a duty-based thing? Did they do the right thing, irrespective of whether or not it produced the right outcome? Or is it utilitarianism? They did the thing that was of greatest value in the moment. It produced the greatest happiness. And students have very heated, and they don't all agree. And that's actually kind of part of the point. I mean, if I asked them at the end of the term, which of these ethical systems was the most persuasive to you? That's the topic of their essay. If I ever end up in a situation where I end up with 25 essays that all say virtue ethics is the one and true way, that would be really depressing. I would have done a bad job.
Well, I'm assuming you would have kind of graded yourself as if like we failed here because this is like herd mentality. At this point.
They're telling me what they think I want to know, and I tell students this all the time. I said, I have zero, unless you're going to say that you're for genocide or murdering people wantonly or something. I have no stake in your opinion. What I have is a stake in helping you to make the best version of your opinion that you possibly can. And if I have to do that by helping you with your grammar, I will do that. If I have to do that by playing devil's advocate for you, I'm happy to do that. But my objective is to help you state your thoughts as clearly as they can be stated. And I think kids, sorry, we kind of got off track there because you'd asked about the character pillars and virtue and these things. But I think that if you treat people like that, and this is a big Kantian thing, but if you treat people as though they were their own ends rather than as means to your ends, I think they have more respect for what you're doing with them.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been filling my head with too much noise, I think, because of the current climate of life. But that's kind of really how almost every debate, whether it was independent media or whatever, is speaking about. It's like, do the ends justify the means? And it's with the way that you're going over all of this. It's like sometimes the ends do justify the means, but you have to have a position statement that supports that, and you have to be willing to hear the rest of it and know, am I on the right course with this? Because the way that the political discourse is in the world right now, it's like it's just a bunch of people yelling about the exact opposite of what the other person said. It's like you're on this side of the aisle, all you're going to do is talk about how this end justifies this mean, and it's okay that it's potentially war crimes, it's potentially genocide, it's potentially this, it's potentially that, because ultimately it's going to provide freedom in this area. But if you don't have if you're not having the people are not given the firm foundation that you're allowing them to have at your school or in schools like yours, then there's never a point where there's an open opportunity for those words to actually combine together and have any kind of coherent debate.
Right.
The second you lose debate, I feel like you lose freedom.
Yeah. Or civility. I mean, I think that's the other thing that goes out the window is, and I've taught both the government class and the moral philosophy class. I don't know that there's two topics that are more likely to evoke people's hottest and most deeply felt sentiments other than their morality, which is sometimes tied to their religion
Mm-hmm.
or their political sense.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, overwhelmingly, somehow, we've constructed this environment in which students are debating the things that mean absolutely the most to them in a very civil way,
Mhm.
in which, again, back to censure and refutation, that they're willing to be refuted. They're willing to like take a step back, look at their views, ask themselves
Mm-hmm.
how firmly convicted they are about that
Mhm.
thing, and then if necessary, revise or
Yeah, well, set the pride aside
Yeah.
and apologize, right? That's
Yeah.
the thing that's missing from a lot of things is either maybe not just apology, but just admitting that, hey, maybe I was on the wrong path here. Nobody wants to sit in that position, it seems like, at this point in life. It's like you're going to lose your job if you admit that you're wrong. So just stay the course.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes kids will say, I'm sorry, this is a stupid question. And I always laugh and I think, at a school? What a crazy place to ask a question. Like,
Right.
that's what you're supposed to be doing here,
Yeah.
is asking things. I mean, and if you're asking
Mhm.
it, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
there's like 8 other people in the room who chickened out
Mm-hmm.
and didn't
Mhm.
want everybody to know that they didn't know the answer.
Sure.
Nobody is as clear. I mean, this is a conversation I have a lot with new teachers is you can tell the new teachers because they typically right out of usually grad school for us, and they're assuming a lot of knowledge on the part of the people that they're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
The experienced or some more veteran teachers come into it and they're like, you'll see them use a word and then they'll pause and they'll go, does everybody know what philanthropy is before I go on?
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is it's kind of an invitation, right? It's an
Mhm.
invitation to say, wait, I'm not totally sure that I do understand what
Mhm.
philanthropy is.
Mm-hmm.
But this lesson is only valuable insofar as everybody knows what the next step
if
is.
the basis of the knowledge isn't there, then it's all lost at that afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had, I can't remember how you phrased it, but you were talking about the best analogy is, don't give the man a fish, teach a man to fish.
Right.
You were talking about around here. The reason I wanted to tie it back around here, we use a term called adult learning.
Mhm.
This is actually something I picked up from a business consultant that I brought in. I had to buy out my business partner as kind of a big, drawn out, dramatic thing, and I wanted to get some ears of a professional, soundboard or adjustments that need to be made for the way that the business is running. Are we providing the right performance incentives to drive the result that we need, so on and so forth? And one of the things that we were missing the most was essentially what we were doing constantly was putting hands on every time there was an issue. When somebody made a mistake, we were putting hands on and just fixing the problem instead of asking very simple questions to help them get to the answer themselves. It's like, around here we call it adult learning. So it's like somebody walks into your office and they're like, hey, how do I handle this, writing this piece out on this job turn-in? So job turn-in around here is essentially, I've sold something and I need to write an instruction manual for the people to build it to go out there so they don't make a mistake. But how do I transcribe all the things that I know and give it to them? So anyways, if they walk in, they ask this question, if you respond by saying, well, write this here and write this here, what we've done is we've essentially created a dependency, because they're always going to come back to you and ask the same question and understand that you're going to do the work for them. So there's going to be an entitlement at some point that's going to start to grow. But at the same time, if you say, well, what do you think you should put in here? Right? Like, well, here's what I was thinking, here's why. And if we just give a little correction to that, so they're thinking in the right pattern, now they've taught themselves something and they never have to come back. And there's no need for them to essentially overuse their resources.
Mhm.
Right. I can't remember what you were saying, but I was like, that is adult learning, but in the school.
Right.
So, well, anyways, we can move on to a couple other things. So in this section, Derek, what I would like to talk about is formation through challenge. So around here, we talk a lot about the value of pressure, heat, and friction. Generally, it kind of all usually is boiling down to like more of like, how do you become a better professional? When we're having this type of discussion, it's like, you're not going to become a better professional unless you're going out and trying to find more information. If you sit and you show up to your meetings every week, you're only going to get a sequence of thoughts that we have at those times, right? If you want to have a robust knowledge and become a subject matter expert, you have to go finding those things, which does require additional effort. additional pressure on yourself, discipline to stay focused on the growth, and so on and so forth. I know that you guys do a lot with Ridgeview that puts your students in more of a not necessarily a comfortable position. I'd like to know more about what it is and the result that you're seeing out of those endeavors that you have.
Sure. Yeah, I think, and one of our lines is, at Ridgeview we do hard things, and sometimes those hard things are, you have a kid who's a great athlete, but they have terrible stage fright, and now you're going to try to coax them into being in the musical. That is a hard thing.
Yeah.
Or you get a kid who maybe is coming into Ridgeview late and they haven't read a lot of big things, and now you're asking them to read very difficult things. That's a hard thing, and outside is another version of a hard thing. I brought up kind of the notion of kid has a fear of heights. I mean, there's a lot of kids. I remember I was on an ice climbing trip once, and somebody told me, it might have been their parent, I can't remember, and he goes, "You're going to see that he gets up about as high as he is tall, and then he just freezes up." And I thought, surely they're joking. Yeah. And they were not joking. And so maybe it's that. And, or these really long, arduous hikes where you're doing 14ers and you're doing these things, and you're going to get up at 3 a.m. and you're going to be on your feet for the next 14 hours. That is an uncommon experience, even for the kids that are from Colorado and grew up here. They have not been outside typically that long or worked that hard. And I think that what we're looking for in there is that, are they going to be able, do they know what it is to sort of dig deep and then keep going? And then there's other things, like when we do the land nav course, for instance, there's kids that they plot points wrong, or they get off track
completely in the wrong spot.
And then you can wander around for a long time in the heat, up and down through the hills. And the question really is, who are you under stress? And I've thought about this in terms of, I had a friend who was at Ranger School back east, and he said, basically he crashed out of his first run at Ranger School. And I said, was it the physicality of the thing? What was it that fell apart? And he goes, man, it wasn't anything about the physicality. He goes, they had us doing this stupid exercise. We had to build this wagon after everybody was tired and totally smoked. And he goes, and I was supposed to be in charge of like 6 or 7 other guys or whatever it was. I just completely came unglued. And he goes, and that was the whole point. That was the point of the exercise. Yeah. Who are you under stress? And I think what some of the best versions of like the outcomes that you see from this is you have this kid who probably thought about most of their experiences as, I'm kind of the stud. I'm the most fit one here. This is not difficult for me. I am going to stand at the front of this line and just lead this group at some breakneck pace that, frankly, half or better of these kids can't keep up with. And they would split our groups up, and then we'd have these conversations with them. Like, where's the leader in the line? And everybody thinks the leader in the line is at the front. But the leader really isn't at the front. And what we saw from...
It's probably the guys in the back that are trying to help people through the course, I'm assuming. Yeah.
And what we ended up finding out kind of over the years of doing this was the kids that were like the genuine, just, really deliberate, conscious leaders, they would go to the front of the group. They would set a certain pace that was achievable for everybody in the group. They would tell the person immediately behind them, just keep on at this pace. I'll be back to check on you in a little bit. And then they would step off the side of the trail, let the whole group go by until they got to the back of the line. And then they would figure out who's this last person in line who's struggling the hardest. The kid that has asthma or maybe just isn't very physically fit. And they would sit there and they would talk with them, encourage them. Wasn't sugary, wasn't pandering, lame. It was, I'm just back here hanging out with you. And then they would make sure that person's morale was good. And then they'd they'd hustle, get back to the front of the line, check on things. And that went on for years, where they just kind of took to doing that really without having to need a lot of coaching. And then a couple of years ago, when we started doing these PE tests in the high school, they would run, their run in 3-mile segments, and then they're timed to meet scores. And the kids who finished first, it was interesting because I wasn't out there with them. And the Miss Grace, the lady who was running the PE thing, she came back. She said, "Man, you should have been out there. You'd have been so proud." She's like, all the kids that finished in time went back and ran back to the last people and ran it so that they didn't have to run alone.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, you talk about the resilience factor, you talk about the character piece that we talked about earlier, and it kind of all came together. It was like
those moral pillars just shined in a natural setting. That's really cool. You know, I learned a lot of that. Mostly it came through athletics, really, for me growing up, because I would always look for who was, you know, the leader of the pack, and I'd want to model after what it was that they were doing. And generally that was the case. Is like, you know, if it was sports, generally they're like, if they call it sprints or call it some kind of conditioning, they'd be the first one to finish because they want to show that the pace is like it's possible.
Right.
But then they go back and they finish with the last person. It always happened that way. Whoever's naturally, like intrinsically, just they had leadership qualities, they would show the possibility, and then they'd come back and support the rest of them and make them understand that this is possible. You can do this. We can move farther. Your brain is in the way. It's not your body. It's your head. Let's keep moving. Stuff like that. Is there, like, what do you see out of the students? Because this, I mean, obviously with the outdoor experiences, you can see that in action, but like, which ones generally, like, are there character traits that you see early on that generally lead them towards being the natural leader?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a conversation we have. Are leaders born or made? I think it's a little bit of both. I think sometimes we see early signs of that. Sometimes they were the kid that benefited from somebody else's, you know, by watching carefully who was in the front and trying to emulate that. A lot of times it's their parents. It doesn't have anything to do with us. And I think it's also a mindset thing. I think they just fundamentally have a different mindset. We were on an ice climbing trip this year down in Ouray, and this girl she's graduating this year, but she's been on 6 ice climbing trips with me, which is wild to think about. And we were down there, and day 2, literally everything was going wrong. I almost lit our yurt on fire. Everything was going sideways. And we got out there, and we couldn't. I mean, you're throwing lines, and oftentimes you can't see what kind of climb it's going to be before you have thrown rope, and then it's just a total. And she's literally sort of side by side with me that whole morning. She's carrying rope, carrying gear, stomping around in crampons and heavy boots and the whole thing. And it wasn't probably until 11:30 that we got kids like climbing in earnest. And so now it's 4:30. They've been climbing for 5 hours or whatever. And she and I are just sitting down at the bottom of this canyon, sort of taking a break. And she looks at me and she says, "How do you think it's going?" And I looked at her and I just laughed because I was thinking, not great, to be honest. And she said, and I said, "Not great." And she goes, "I don't know. It's a beautiful day. We were worried there wasn't going to be good ice. This is great ice. We've been climbing for 5 hours. I got to go on a hike this morning. I learned how to build anchors, throw rope. I think it's all good vibes."
Yeah. That's beautiful. This is the mindset.
And you know, you look at people like that, and I just think, man, those are your leaders because they're the people that are calm in the storm, right? Sorry to take this back to a classical reference, but Dante has this line about the Inferno, and one of the levels in the Inferno is the people that were just, you know, consumed by angst in their lives. And the way that he depicts them is that they're just buried almost up to their necks in mud, and they're fighting the mud like pointlessly for eternity. And I think so many of us are like caught up in trying to figure out how to make the thing work with this insane energy that we're expending. But those aren't necessarily the leaders. The leaders are the ones that are like, hey, like, let's take stock real quick of what's actually happening.
Let's be thankful for what we do have.
Yeah. And this is going to be okay. And, you know, she's an incredibly competitive person, but I think how she sustains that really is by mindset more than any other single factor you could point to.
Absolutely. Yeah. I won't go on this tangent because it's just a whole nother 30 minutes that I'd have to, take time from you. But I used to be really captivated by any literature surrounding special forces. When you're bringing up Rangers, I read countless SEAL books or Ranger books and things like that. And at one point, that's something I wanted to aim for, but I got in my own way with that particular endeavor. So, like I said, it's been quite the path to get to right here. But anyways, there was a lot of basically every piece of literature around like with SEALs, they do BUDS, basic underwater demolition and swim training, right? So they're like that. It's Hell Week is the only thing anybody ever talks about, but like the entire process is 6 months long, and every single day is a pass fail. If you fail that day, you're out, right? And the attrition rate is incredible. It's like 180 people come in, and somewhere between 4 to 6 people end up graduating in each class, right? So it's just like that by itself is pretty daunting when you're walking into one of it. And they're like, they started doing research and studies and trying to generate statistics around like, where did these kids come from? What was their sports background? What religion do they have? They just took all these different metrics and are trying to figure out what it was that made it so that those 4 or 6 people, what is different about them than the other 176 that don't pass?
Yeah.
And they've never really been able to come up with a very good response to that outside of the word grit. And they're like, we don't think this can be something taught.
Yeah.
And there are other parts of it, the mindset, which is, people who find the silver linings in what's going on. People who are able to look at the positive, even if it's only one positive with 99 negatives, they can still focus and stay centered on that piece. Like that is part of that literature, but the grit piece, it's still a mystery.
Yeah, it is.
So I was wondering if you'd seen it in the kids, because these are some of them are 18, but some of them are past athletes, some of them are whatever. So they're past this formation period. So I didn't know if you had any insight on what it is, that grit factor within the children. If there's any insight, it's like, that's just a personal question of mine.
Yeah, I think, so the line that I bring up, just, along the lines of the SEAL thing and the BUDS deal is I'm sure, I don't know if you read this or listened to it as an audiobook, but Goggins,
and that's Can't Hurt Me, right?
Yeah. Which is somewhat of a terrifying book.
He's an absolute psychopath.
But there is like one line in there that I thought, man, that kind of gets to the heart of what the grit piece is. And I'm probably slaughtering his story, but he says, there was a part of the run on these long runs that they were doing around Coronado. And if they turned left, it meant everybody was going back for showers and chow. And if they kept going, nobody knew how long the run was going to be that day. And he goes, the number of people that dropped out when they thought we were going to go left and we went straight was wild.
Yeah.
And it's because you start getting your heart set on the notion that it's over and I just got to go this much further. It's sort of like Muhammad Ali's saying. Somebody said, how many push-ups do you do? And he said, I don't start counting till they hurt.
Yeah. Well, you have a preconceived notion, and you can see that like a practical application when I'm exercising, right? It's like, if I know that my set is 10, I'll get to 10.
That's right.
Right. And it'll be very difficult between 7, 8, and 9.
I was just going to say 8, 9, and 10 are tough.
Right. But if my set is 15, it doesn't feel difficult till 12, 13, 14, and 15. Right.
Yeah.
So when you have this preconceived notion, there's something between the mind-body connection that ultimately just curbs your ability to perform.
It does.
And there's a lot of people in like the health and fitness world where their entire like statement and their position statement on why they're the best trainer, or why they have the best philosophy is like, we stop counting. Right. The second you stop counting and you start performing for whatever the purpose is, things change. You start to see different limitations. I think in the same book, they talk about it a little bit. It's in other books, but they talk about the 40% rule. But David Goggins really hammers that one in. It's like human capacity, like, because your brain's job is to help you survive.
Right.
And it's like, this is hot, don't touch it. Right? So when you're in those incredibly painful positions, whether it's the outdoor trip or whether it's BUDS or whatever it is, it's like your brain literally thinks you're you're on your pathway to death. So let's do anything we can to get away from it. Right. But what is crazy is like generally the limitation where most people's bodies start shutting down is they still have 40% of their physical capability there, but their mind says you're going to die if you go on this path.
Right.
So breaking that connection and somehow pushing through it, I found all of my success in going past that barrier.
Right.
I learned a lot of that in the wrestling room. I wrestled up through college, and it was like any wrestler I've ever talked to, they'll say the same thing. It's like, it's a love-hate thing. You don't love wrestling while you're doing it. Yeah. Nobody does.
You love what it gave you.
Love what it gave you. Absolutely. And it's because, you're tested mentally, physically, emotionally, sometimes even spiritually as you're going through all of this stuff that you're doing. It's like, this isn't just full capacity for your body, it's full capacity for your mind. And you're sitting there and you're having a battle with yourself internally inside your head the whole time. It's like, I should stop here. I should do this. I should do this. I should do this. How am I going to preserve and protect myself the whole time? And if you find ways through those things, the next day, that 40%, wherever that is, or that 60%, and then it's just a little bit farther. And then it's a little bit farther before you start feeling it, a little bit farther before you start feeling it. And eventually you never actually meet that limit, and you realize that it's limitless. You can go as far as you want to, whenever you want to, if you stop thinking and start doing. So it's kind of the opposite of some of the conversation we had at the beginning, but it's like, how are you teaching these kids, like with that, I guess, in mind? It's like, I know you're putting them in challenging positions where they're learning complex, very, very intellectual things. They're going out and they're using their bodies. When they hit those breaking points, what do you guys do?
I think that's, the corollary, of course, is kind of what you raised, which is sports and I think really talented coaches. And I think we're essentially coaches at that point, which is to say, we'll have kids build an anchor, for instance, and then, it's one thing to build an anchor and double check it and say, yep, I've done all the things right, and the gates are all facing the right way, and the knots look right, and whatever. And then you're like, okay, why don't you start your rappel?
Go use it.
Yeah. And then looking off a 80-foot thing, like, wait, for real?
Yeah.
And I think what you're trying to build up there is, of course, you're double checking it, and you're not going to let them do anything that they're going to.
That's the invisible net.
But that's the invisible net, right? Is I think what we're trying to get them to see, and it's wild. I've had tell too many stories, so I'm not using names. So, but I've had parents send students on trips and tell their student, "Listen, I want you to go on the trip, and I want you to hang out with your friends, but I don't want you to go do the thing. Like, I don't want you to do the 14er, and I don't want you to go on this climb." Yeah. And the kids will end up there, and they're almost doing it defiantly. Yeah. And they're like, because the parent thought that they could. Yeah. And I think the kid is looking for an opportunity to prove to themselves, not to their friends or anybody else. They're looking to prove to themselves that they're actually capable of this thing they've almost been prevented from doing. And that is huge. We did an exercise. We're up in Estes one time with this guy that we used to work with. And the objective, it was nighttime in the winter. These kids were doing these fire building exercise. So they had everything in the world to build a fire. And then they would build a fire on this patch of ice. And John would walk over and he'd put out their fire and he'd take away two of their things to build a fire with. And he'd say, build another fire. And he just kept doing this. It was like minus 12. Yeah. Wind's blowing. They're on an ice sheet. And pretty soon they have almost
That's not challenging
nothing. At all. Yeah, I know. They have almost nothing. And their hands are frozen and they're still starting fires. And I pulled John aside and I was talking to him and I said, man, it is unbelievable how you kept morale up enough that you taught all these kids how to build fires. These kids could build a fire anywhere. And John looked at me and he laughed and he goes, Derek, it's not about a fire. It's about confidence. Like, if they know that they can do this under stress, we have one last thing to worry about with them out in the wilderness, because all of our endeavors are two-way adventures. Like, they have to come home too.
Yeah, you got to get to the top of down the mountain too, which is sometimes a little more chaotic.
It is, and I think that kids they benefit from it. And it comes up in their senior theses. Like, kids that really, really struggled to complete a trip talk about it for years. They talk about the first time they went camping or how scared they were about doing the Via Ferrata down at Telluride or something.
Mm-hmm.
But you're building people up. Again, I think, and again, that outdoor space is a classroom every bit as much as those four walls and a chalkboard are, or the seminar table is, where you're just sitting across from somebody talking about a book, or that PAC stage in which they're getting up to give a speech or sing a song or do a dance or whatever they're doing. Or mock trial. Think about the kids going into mock trial, and they're in an actual courtroom with judges and attorneys and the whole bit. And it's high stress.
It's got to be intimidating.
Yeah.
The only thing I know about that is Suits, because I thought that show was great. So.
So I mean, that's an intimidating environment to like have to remember all your parts and do your thing, and yet they do it. And I think that's what we're trying to build up, because we don't know what they're going to go on in life to do. But we're going to send them out there with as many of the bases covered as we possibly can, and with as much confidence as we possibly can.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's building confidence. It does generally require there being that steady voice, the calm and the storm voice, the coach or John. It sounds like it's like, you can do it.
Yep. I'm just going to give you space. I'm just going to let you do this thing. I've taught you how to do it.
Yeah.
And I think to something you were saying earlier about pushing yourself physically, is it tends to be, I've thought about this a lot on really long hikes, particularly when it's really cold, somebody told me once, and I think it's a line out of Paradise Lost, is, Satan is the great deceiver, right? He is that voice that is doubtful and that is uncertain and that is hesitant. And man, when you can convince somebody to repress that voice and just push,
it's amazing what can happen.
Yeah, you unleash them.
Yeah,
and in the best possible way.
Yeah. Well, I brought this up on this podcast a few times. My mom, this will always stick with me. My mom used to tell me, the devil is not red-skinned with a pointy tail and a pitchfork. She'd say, the devil is well-dressed, blue eyes, and speaks well.
That's right.
But to relate it to the particular part of it, it's like the devil can sometimes be you versus you. Yeah, it's like it's the voice. It is the voice in the back of your head. It's hard to get past that, right? And it needs a foundation like what you guys are building at Ridgeview. I love it. You have these moldable minds, and you're giving them real guidance, but with guardrails the whole time. It's like I talk with my team about this all the time. It's like our training philosophy is very hands-on. Like it's, we do a lot of virtual training things. We do a lot of practical stuff, but there's a certain point after about 2 weeks where it's like it's you out there now. You're going to go test all of these new things that you just went through, but I will make sure you don't fail. So go try it. And if you fall, I'll be the safety net. We'll pick you back up. We'll do these things. But I don't think we're being as invisible as we should, because some of the guys take a heck of a lot longer than they should to progress through it. So I needed to get some pointers from you guys on how to become the invisible safety net. But either way, it's really cool that's one of the things I find the most. It's just the thing I love the most about running this business. It's like I've never had an affinity for roofing. I don't know anybody who's like, wow, I love shingles, but I have an affinity for what it does for me, with my family, what kind of life I can build with it. But the part that really I love the most is watching the professional development of the people that I work with. It's like, it's, when we interview people, it's a two-way street. It's like, they want to spend any time here? Like, is this the right person to spend time with? And it's not just us saying, hey, are you the right fit? It's like, it's both. And once we've made the investment, it's like, I don't want to be complacent, non-existent. I don't want you to fall and fail. I want to be where I can tip you over those little barriers, right?
Yeah.
You need the confidence.
Well, it's it's kind of interesting you bring that up, because as I said, we're right in the middle of the senior theses, and I was telling somebody the other day, because they were like, man, those questions were hard, because they essentially speak for 20 minutes, present their thesis, and then they open it up for questions. And by virtue of my position, I guess the first questions go to me. And I think there's a lot of nervousness about what I'm going to ask and things. And what I told somebody is, I said, I've watched other people do these questions where they're kind of like gotcha questions in an attempt to embarrass or test or tear down a student. That is not my objective. My objective is I want to pitch you a genuine question, a good question, a question probably without an obvious answer. But my second question is going to be based on how you responded to my first. And I am I'm your secret ally. Because my goal is to build you up and make you look good, but I've got to be able to pivot and adjust.
I want to accentuate the value of your thesis.
I'm not trying to tear you down. I'm not trying to surprise you. I'm not trying to make a fool of you. I want to build you up.
Yeah. Well, in order for people to follow or paint on the same canvas, follow any vision, they need to know that support's there, right? And well, it's clear you care about these people. You wouldn't have changed your entire life to do this, which I'm sure you would have been a great lawyer regardless, but change your entire life to form young minds and push them into the world so they can be change makers. It's pretty cool.
Well, I think it's been a great career, and it still hopefully will continue to be. I'm sure have you heard of a concept, Japanese thing called ikigai?
I brought that up like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I think about that a lot. I'm kind of in these like various fathers groups and things, and we were talking about this. We're having whiskey, and I said, somebody said, "Oh, must be so stressful." The 90, we jokingly call it the 90 days of May. And I
seems
said,
like it.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it is stressful, and it is long, and it is long hours and things like that. But when you think about it in terms of like the ikigai thing, are you doing something good for the world? I mean, I certainly hope so. I mean, I talk about it a lot of different ways. Hopefully I'm doing good for the individual. I hope that I'm doing good for America by doing a small part to put good people into it, that are thoughtful people. Are you able to make a living off it? Yes. Are you good at it? Well, that's for the board to judge.
It's debatable. I think so. Yeah.
And do you take something out of it for yourself? Not everybody, I think, can find that in their career, which I think I thought of this because of something you said. And a lot of those dads in those groups are in a similar position. They're like, do I love shingles? Actually, when you said, I've never met anybody that loves shingles. I thought I probably should have loved them a little more before I put on the last roof. But
wrong color.
Well, chose the wrong company.
There you go.
That way.
Well, you know somebody.
Yeah, now I know somebody. But they look at it. You have to figure out where you're going to draw the value from. Is it in building the business? Because in building the business, that might definitely be the development of a passion and do all of those other things. But for a lot of guys, I think they're stuck in a position, and women, they're stuck in a position in which the thing they do isn't the thing that they're most passionate about. It's what it enables them to go and do with their families and with their friends and the people that they care about.
It was the basis of the exact last episode that we just put out. It's like not everybody is doing. They're not. It's not ikigai. Right?
Yeah.
They haven't merged all four of those circles together and sit in this nirvana state, or that's not how they put it, but it's like this is euphoria. You've won. you know.
Yeah.
But if they can kind of take real personal inventory and realize this is supporting my real happiness. If it's out here, you got to make the connection between the two. You have to remember it's like I'm good at this. I might not love it, but I'm good at it.
Right.
I love this, and this allows me to do this. We got to remember those connections every once in a while. Otherwise, people, there's a reason that people are on SSRIs and all of the other antidepressants in the world. And it's like people don't take as much personal inventory, I don't think, as they should. I think that thought has been removed because it's a point and click society. It's like everything is so fast. You can click a button, food will be here in 10 minutes.
That's right. And I think we got to tell each other, right? I mean, this is another thing I think emphasize with students, with faculty, in the various parent groups I'm in, is like, it's easy to be critical. Like I had a mom tell me one time, she said, positivity is a discipline. But man, is it ever?
Yeah. You preach.
But we got to take the time to tell one another when it goes right and the things that are exceptional about people, because there's just, the world is just not, it's filled full of criticism and judgment and harshness and really an indifference to whether or not we grow. But we have to care about one another in that respect.
Yeah.
And hopefully everybody's got somebody who does. But you talk, I mean, as you said, it's not just the SSRIs, but it's like suicide rate, particularly post 2020. And a lot of people did not have that in their lives, and it's
back to that communal. I mean, by nature, humans need to be around each other. Like it's like it takes a village to raise a child, right? It's like that makes a lot of sense. It takes a lot of people. I mean, who the heck is it? Is it Friedman? It's the economist,
Milton Friedman.
Milton Friedman. Yeah. And I saw a video with Milton Friedman where he's talking about a pencil. He's talking about the world, the import export and the way the world actually works. And he's like, do you have any idea how many people touch this pencil?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's how it works. And unless you're living in some kind of off-grid thing and your parents taught you to be completely self-sufficient, you need other people. And it's not just for what they have, it's for the support. It's for building an emotional network of some sort. It's for people to lean on. There's a lot more to this life,
That's right. I think that's the essence of genuine friendship. I mean, this comes up a lot in the senior thesis as well. It's like, what is real friendship? And I said, I think that you don't know who you are until you've had like a genuine friend. It's hard to just it's like trying to have an understanding of your own country without ever been someplace else.
Yeah.
I mean, I do this as my own kind of professional development. Is I'll pick 4 or 5 different schools every summer that I will write to whoever their heads are and say, I'd love to come visit and spend a couple of days at your school. Because it's too easy to lose sight of what Ridgeview is or what I want for it to be if I'm just locked in this echo chamber. And I think it's the same thing for individuals. If you're just locked inside of your own head.
Well, that kind of relates directly back to what you're teaching in those classes. It's like you have a predisposed way of, this is how we do this. Like we build the school, we build these minds, but it's like, well, maybe there's some other ideas.
Yeah.
Maybe we're off track with this one thing. We're actually doing a disservice. And this is, I call it secret shopping. I do the same thing with, with other competitors and things like that, or other salespeople. And it's like, there's a lot that can be learned outside of just our own heads. It's like, we should expand a little bit.
Yeah, go investigate and poke around. And I mean, it's, the places that are typically, one guy, I was at a school in Colorado Springs one time, and I said, man, I'm surprised you're being so open and helpful and you're giving all this information and everything. And he laughed and he said, well, let's just put it this way. We're far enough away to be friendly. And I laughed and I thought, that's a great line. But I have been surprised by the number of schools that have let me come in and visit and talk with their students and talk with their parents. And I have learned a ton from that experience. And I'm always, probably my most effusive thank you notes go to those places because what they're offering you is really hard won experience and lessons that they're, they had to fight tooth and nail for some of that stuff.
They're giving you wisdom. They learned through trial and error, I actually have a theory, and that's half the reason that this podcast exists. I was doing a lot of research a couple of years back, and I was like, what makes the subject matter expert the subject matter expert? Like when you think of real estate, you think of Grant Cardone. Why is it Grant Cardone? Why is he the guy? I'm sure there's people with bigger portfolios and blah, blah, blah. And so I looked up different people and whatever. And a lot of it really boiled down to the people who are the most willing to give away information for free are generally the ones that are regarded as like the absolute. This is the place where you're supposed to find the information. That's the way the marketing world at least looks like. And so that's why we started building, the first set of videos that we put out were literally like, we're giving away trade secrets.
Yeah.
Watch the video. But I've always thought in my mind, it's like, I could put this, operational manual this big on the table of every little minute granular detail of how we run this business, hand it to you, give you 2 years, and I'd walk in and it's completely different than what we do. Right. And I know that nothing's going to ever be just completely like you can model as much as you want to, but there's no way to replicate because you are different. You have a different heart. You have a different upbringing. You have different thought processes. You have different education. You've read different books. You've done different things. Right. So even though you have a pathway, it's going to come out differently. So I've never been worried about sharing information. And I'm very appreciative when people are giving or are willing to share the information back. It's like this world needs to grow. The only way you're going to do that is if you've done trial and error, like you read Mastery before.
Yep. Yeah.
So Mastery, I mean, the biggest section of that book is the apprenticeship section. And it's the importance, like, they're breaking down the 10,000 hours concept, but it's like, if you find a mentor, you find somebody to work with, they have spent their entire career trialing and erroring this thing out to figure out their flavor, their way of doing things. But the apprentice only takes a year or 2 years to learn all of that. Why did it take you 50 and why did it take you 2?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? It's because, well, I've broken it down, summarized it, and I have emotional ties to why this is important. So if you take it and you actually receive it, you're going to do all right.
Yeah. I had that realization one time. I was working on something at the house, this construction thing. My dad was staying with me at the time, and I realized, it was one of those moments where you realize you're 7/8 of the way through a project, but now you have to start over and tear out everything you just did because you screwed one thing up at the very beginning of the process.
Yep.
And I looked up at him like, do you realize how much money the materials I just wasted? And he goes, yeah. That's how I learned how to do that too. Well, I'm glad you're getting a kick out of this because I'm about $500 short.
I'm glad you jumped in earlier. Yeah. That's funny.
Well, I'm glad you just watched me tile the whole floor wrong.
That's funny. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap on the conversation. This has been awesome. I was actually really nervous to have you in here. I'm like, usually I'm the most intelligent person at the table. Just kidding. JD and everybody else. Just joking. But no, it's, you are the head of my kids' school. I really appreciate what you do with them. And I'm really thankful for all the words that you've given, the guidance, just the thoughts. This has been a good conversation. So thank you for being here. Derek, if you'd like to plug your podcast, if any of our viewers want to jump in there and hear more of what you have to say, go ahead and shout it out.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me on, and thank you for having your kids at our school. It's an honor to serve everybody. I think there's nothing more important in a person's life than their children. So we are entrusted with the most valuable thing they have, which is a huge privilege and an honor. So if people are more interested about Ridgeview Classical Schools, we do have our own podcast. No video, just audio, but it is Hoplite Radio, and you can find that on Apple and all of the usual podcast streaming places.
All right. So definitely do check it out. I have listened in. It is very good, actually. I wish I knew everything that you know. I'd feel like I'm the coolest guy ever. Well, that's it for today's episode of Into the Lion's Den. Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to ask any questions, or maybe bring Derek back on, just like and subscribe, throw those comments into the comment section below, and hopefully maybe we can connect with you in your home turf, put out an audio one. Maybe that'd be kind of cool. But
yeah, that'd be great.
But if there's no follow-up, I just thank you so much for being here. It's really cool. And thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you on the flip side.
Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Into the Lion's Den. We appreciate your time, and we hope that you've gathered enough ammunition to go out, fight the good fight, and become a better person every single day. Please like and subscribe, engage in our content, ask us some questions. We'd love to tailor fit the next episode to you.